I'm Jack Berryman, ACSM historian, and we're in Las Vegas talking today with Lauve Metcalfe as part of our ACSM's Distinguished Leaders in Sports Medicine and Exercise Science video series. So thank you and for coming. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. Well, first of all, I just wanted to start a little bit with your early life. Where did you grow up? Were you always active? Did you play sports? Did you go to college, and where? What did you major in? Those sorts of things. And then we'll move on from there.
Sure, okay. Well, I grew up in Maryland on a farm, and which is semi unusual when you talk about it, because you don't hear too many people that grow up on farms. But yeah. It wasn't a. It was more of a rural setting, which I think kind of helped me get in touch with outdoors and play, and kind of being creative with hanging out and doing things by yourself. I went to. I was always active when I was a child, and I went to the University of Arizona. I went to the University of Miami, and my focus for my undergrad was physical education. So I knew in high school, I think that I wanted to be a physical education teacher, and I had some good physical education teachers in elementary school and in junior high. Now back then they didn't have the Title IX wasn't until 1972, so that was when I was in college.
Okay.
So we didn't have a lot of opportunity for any kind of organized sports when I was a child. So that's why I think being involved in the farm, and then when I was in my adolescent years moving to the mountains, and a little bit more residential kind of an area, but still that outdoorsiness was what kind of created my interest in physical activity.
My wife and I grew up in central Pennsylvania.
Oh, yes.
And she tells me the same stories about there weren't these opportunities for girls,
right,
Right. And then I did my PhD in College Park. So I was going to ask you where in Maryland.
Nittany Lions,
no, that's Penn State.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that one.
No, Terrapins.
Okay.
At the University of Maryland. So you were in Western Maryland?
I was in Frederick. Well, I grew up in New Windsor. That was the farm, my grandfather's farmland. But then I moved to Frederick, which was really the larger. Well, now it's just kind of a small metropolis outside of Washington.
All part of the big D.C. spread. So now when you went to Miami,
yes.
You took exercise physiology and
back then it was physical education, health, physical education, and recreation.
Right.
And so it was much more focused from a teaching standpoint, and then my minor was in psychology. So it was an educational psych minor, but it really was more of a discipline of a teaching curriculum. Right. So I did student teaching and just that whole aspect.
That's what I did.
Miami.
Exactly.
But I also. I'm not sure as far as how Title IX gets involved with this, but I went out in my freshman year for the intercollegiate volleyball team, and I made that team. And then subsequently went out for the basketball team and made that one, and then went out for softball and made that. Wow. Now, it might have been the basketball was my second year, but the first year I played volleyball and softball at the University of Miami. And then the second year I think I played volleyball, softball, and basketball, and that was a little bit too much. And then the third year, I think I just played volleyball and softball.
So this is mid-70s, late 70s?
Mid-72 through 76.
Okay.
So
right when Title IX is happening.
Exactly.
Were they starting scholarships yet?
They had
women or not?
Well, at Miami they'd started scholarships, but just for golf and tennis and swimming, but not for the team sports. When my third year, they started bringing in some great female athletes as far as basketball. There was one woman who played basketball and softball, so they had a little twofers kinds of things. But when we were first there, there were 2 or 3 women that played at least one sport, if not 2 sports, and it just was an interesting, because it wasn't intramurals, it was intercollegiate. It was so you think, how could I have done that? But I was interested, and the coaches were interested in having players that had good attitudes, and
Yeah.
That was one thing that I think I developed there was just the understanding of how important it is to have a good attitude.
And I remember, because I was in college about the same time, that most of the women athletes were also physical education majors.
Yes, yes.
Because that's what they were interested in.
Exactly.
It was a natural for them.
Yes.
So when you finished your degree, did you go into teaching? Or?
Well, I did a limited amount of teaching back then, and I think that I think I taught for about a half a year, and I got more involved in politics for some reason, and I was a state Senate aide, and I went to Tallahassee at that time, and I worked with a state senator from Florida, and was still active in physical activity up there, and saw how unfortunately unfit the House and the Senate were, and they were had crazy lifestyles, interestingly, back in that time. And someone kept remarking that Lauve should create the fitness program for the Senate here. And that sounded interesting to me. And I thought, well, if I really need to be taken seriously, you know, I'm not teaching right now, but I'm interested in this. I'm interested in adults. I need to go back and get a graduate degree. So at that time, after about a year and a half of being a Senate aide, I applied to Florida State University and got accepted into their sports psychology program. And with the emphasis or the focus that I wanted to do is create adult fitness programming. And I also was interested in body image and self-esteem. And that was just from some of my own experience with being in sports and playing sports, but becoming a large woman in my college years, you know, that freshman 15 type of an aspect, and then constantly dieting and struggling with, you know, what I was supposed to look like. And so when I graduated from University of Miami, I did a part-time modeling experience down there. It, you know, wasn't very fruitful, but it was one of those things that, you know, all the young girls want to do, and you know, oh, this would be great to have this kind of exposure. And it was both good and bad exposure, because it got a little bit too much emphasis on the outside appearance. And so in going back to graduate school, I wanted to look at the psychological effects of exercise. And at the same time, I still had this idea of like, well, the Senate wants to do this fitness program. So my graduate research then became the first state employee fitness program, and it was looking at the psychological and social variables and job satisfaction of a 12-week parkour exercise program for state employees.
What time period was that?
That was 78 to 80. I graduated in the early part of 80, and so
was
it was
that an
1970.
MS then, or what?
Masters of Science. Yes.
I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Bob Singer?
Bob Singer was there, David
I thought
Pardman,
so,
and Dwayne Johnson.
Wow, because Singer at the time was like the top
Yes,
guy.
he was.
So you actually
and
were
I'm sure
able to
he
do-
would think he has good thoughts about me too.
But you were sort of at the right place at the right time.
I was, and you know, the interesting piece about that, as far as the Senate experience for me, brought me into, and then when I was working in Miami, I worked at this upscale, fashionable private club. And it, you know, the women had to wear, so that had a lot of the body image stuff too, as far as they hired all these models and different things. And here they're bringing me in, and I'm really more of a physical education major. But they did a lot of hype about that too. I got exposed in their magazines as, oh, if you want to learn anything about fitness, come see Lauve. And so when I went back to graduate school, I worked for the Department of Economic Development, or Department of Commerce. And
Is that in Tallahassee?
That's in Tallahassee. And then I also got a job with the governor's office, because they had just started the governor's council on physical fitness and sports.
Course. Talk about timing.
Exactly. So that
Fantastic.
it was almost like the perfect triangle then, as far as having, and I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do, which I think helpfully, being out for a couple years, having exposure to the Senate, having exposure to the club life in Miami, coming back to graduate school and looking at it from a psychological standpoint, it gave me a lot more momentum to create what I wanted to create. So I had met the Governor's Council, the executive director of the President's, of the Governor's Council there, Linda Kreider at the time. And she introduced me to the President's Council kingpin at the time, who was Dick Keeler, who was running government and state relations and the program development for the President's Council. And I had told all of them that, I was interested in putting together this program for the state Senate. And they said, well, and my major professor at the time was Dwayne Johnson. And he said, we can do the psychosocial variables, we can do the job satisfaction variables, we can, okay for the 12-week program, all this stuff. He says, but you need to have a more defined audience. He says, will these senators participate 3 times a week?
Right.
I'm like, oh my God. So, the reality of the situation. So I went into the Department of Commerce and through the Governor's Council, and we recruited through, so that's when it became the state employee fitness program for that office of the Department of Education, Transportation, and Commerce were right around this fitness park.
I bet Florida had to have been one of the first.
It was the first, yes. So it was lovely. And one of the reasons it was the first is no one had any money to do anything. So here I was, a willing participant and a project coordinator. I had the background of the Governor's Council and the President's Council, and it was remarkable how that was put together, and then that research then got exposed to, we went to the Governor's Council meeting, which actually is being held here during the conference here, the summit. So the collaboration of all the organizations has been a very important part of my whole exposure here.
Again, a case of the right thing at the right time, the right place. I mean, wow, you couldn't have planned it any better than that, really.
And and it's almost like letting go of outcome and just being interested in certain aspects. And what happened is that whether I was creating the relationships with these people or they were with me, the first time I went into the governor's office and spoke to Linda Crowder, who's a fabulous woman and she's a friend to this day, I said, hi, my name's Lauve Metcalfe. I used to be a Senate aide for Senator Myers. I'm here doing my graduate work and I want to work with you. So what can we do? And she was like, well, it's so nice to see you, but I'm sorry, thank you very much. And I thought, so okay, so I went back and I did my preliminary work with my master's, created my thesis and all that stuff, and still needed to come back and do something. So I walked back in 4 months later, and I said, back here again, this is what I want to do, this is what the university's going to do, this is what I can do from Department of Commerce, I've got all the people here. Let's go, and finally, what could she say?
Yeah, you can't say no to that.
Yeah, so it's, but when looking at it, it has, you need to have a little bit of fortitude with it, and maybe, I don't know if it was a naiveness, I don't think so. I was like, I want to do this.
Well, it was the right thing, you knew that.
Yes.
Clearly the right thing.
I think that the thing is sometimes in the course of my career, once I've gotten involved with something and someone says, well, I'm sorry, we can't do that, I've let go of it. And it's a good lesson to know that maybe it's not a no.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need to kind of come at it from a different angle.
Well, did you hear about ACSM during your master's degree, or
it was more of AFERD. And going down to the American Alliance of Health Physical Education. Yes. And at that time, it was through AFERD, and then once I got out of my graduate degree, and I put together and written the thesis and started to do some other papers and different things. The President's Council was the one who said, there's a group of Association for Fitness Directors in Business and Industry. They're meeting in conjunction with this Governor's Council group, and you need to come and present this information.
Oh, from your thesis?
From my thesis. Yeah. So I said, why not? Of course, I can do that. So I went out to Colorado Springs, and that was in 1980, I believe, and I was supposed to do a small little segment for this, and there was an opening in the general session, and Dr. Keeler said, would you like to share here? And I didn't know any different, so I shared at the general session, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So I got introduced to this association, which now we are the International Association for Worksite Health Promotion. We're a society under ACSM. I'm one of the past presidents of this, and I'm on the board now, and it's clearly been the network and the professional and personal relationships that's continued to help drive me for what I want to do within my work and with the value that I think that we have to give to society as far as just the professional organization connection. So it's like the side street of ACSM, but certainly
Sure.
it's one that you have to honor as much as the the internal heart of the association.
Well, that's certainly, I think, one of the strengths of ACSM is the diversity.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the beauty of it, the strength of it. I wanted to ask you before I move on, did you ever get involved in any of the sports psychology groups?
You know, not with ACSM. I'm trying to think of when
There
I
were
did.
several national.
There were some, and
I was in a sport history group, and I know at the time there was a sport psychology group of which
Yes.
Singer was a big part.
right. And for some reason that didn't happen. I think I got so involved with the association, the International Association for Worksite Health
That was
Promotion.
your primary.
And so it always twisted, and I always focused on the psychosocial aspects of it. And my good friend and colleague at University of Miami and then Florida State, Jody Yamber, continued at FSU and got her PhD in sports psychology, and she's a sports psychologist now down in Florida. And but it's interesting to see just the kind of the parallel paths that we created, and a lot of those people that were in that sports psychology group with either masters or their PhD, just some wonderful experiences they had. Now, I added a little bit more of the administration supervision because Dwayne Johnson at the time was focused on that. And we wanted to look at it more from just the psychological aspect, but really more of an integrated, how do you develop a program? So that was also a great experience for me because he allowed me to see that program implementation aspect that I wouldn't have seen if I just had gone down the sports psychology route.
So time's going quickly. Where are you located now?
I'm in Tucson.
And what are you doing now?
I'm in Tucson, and I have been in Tucson since 1989. I did corporate programming for, after I did the State Department for the Governor's Office, I was the fitness director for Pratt Whitney Aircraft in Florida, and that was their largest manufacturer. I got that job because of my connection with the President's Council. And Pratt Whitney's medical director called them up to say, do you know of anybody that would be interested in and then from that job, I continued my work with sharing information about how to develop programs, now from a more of a blue collar standpoint, as well as maybe integrating into different aspects of, like Pratt & Whitney and United Technologies. It was more of an integrated program.
So would you be called their fitness director?
I was a fitness director back then. That was the terminology. Wellness wasn't quite in use.
Yeah,
so
I
was
knew the fitness director for Boeing.
Yes,
from
yes.
Seattle. And
well, yes. Well,
I remember when he was hired.
Yes. Well, and then we created this close club, this fraternity of fitness directors, and then from that time I went up to Campbell Soup in the 80s and developed a program that was a corporate-wide, but it also, we integrated into the Soup as well, you know, the company of well-being, Soup is Good Food.
I remember when that took place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and at that time...
And that was you?
That was me. Well, I was director of program development for that. And Dick Keeler from the President's Council.
I remember the literature, the folders.
Yes. So we did White House conferences. We were in alliance with ACSM and AFRD and all the different groups. And I did that until '89, and the president of the company left, of Campbell, and a new administration came in. We didn't have quite as much support. I went out to Canyon Ranch and Tucson to develop programming for executives out there.
I see.
And that funding wasn't quite as solid as we thought as far as getting involved from a corporate standpoint at that time at Canyon Ranch.
So Canyon Ranch, is that a private?
It's a private, it's a spa,
Yes,
resort, kind of a whole philosophy, way of living. But when I was down there, I got involved with the community and the wellness councils of Tucson, and did a program for the university and for the University Exercise Science Division.
University of Arizona.
University of Arizona. Charles Tipton, Tim Lohman, and Tim Lohman was in the audience. And I was talking to him about how to get people involved in programming and the psycho and social aspects of it. And he came to me afterwards. He said, we need to talk. He says, I've got all these NIH grants, And we've got wonderful funding. We don't have the understanding of how to implement
Was this
them.
Tipton or?
This was, well, Tipton introduced me to Tim Lohman, but this is Tim Lohman.
Yeah, okay.
So that started an 18-year relationship
Wow.
with Tim and the
Wow.
team at the university
Wow.
in developing projects for Native American children.
Fantastic.
The TAG, the Adolescent Girls Physical Activity Project, weight loss programming, a wide variety. We did a community challenge within Tucson. So yeah, and we're still working. Tim's retired, and you need to interview him. He's got fabulous stories in and of himself. But,
Well, Tipton's one of my best friends.
Yes.
I've interviewed
Yes.
him, and he's interviewed me, and we've written things together. So, would you, or so you're in a private business now?
No, I'm private.
A
I've just
consulting-
transitioned.
Consulting or what?
just transitioned over as far as Tim retired 2 years ago, and we were kind of a 1-2 punch with some of our outside funding, and we were able to be successful for some of that for some family foundations. But I am like pretty much like out on a limb now doing this entrepreneurial experience for this last year. And it's different, but it's, I have to go back to some of my roots and some of my early inclinations as far as, just, putting it out there and asking people and being interested in certain aspects. And so it's been fun to utilize that. Tim and I are collaborating on some other projects that we want to see out in the mainstream.
Were you employed by University of Arizona then at one
18
time?
years. 18 years on the faculty,
Okay.
yeah.
And grants, a lot of grants support?
I was all soft money.
Wow. So
yes.
you didn't have to teach then, or did
Well,
you?
I taught some classes and I taught some. I didn't have, I wasn't on that track, but I would come in and do specialty teaching and guest lectures.
Was that in exercise science then, or what?
It was in
what
exercise
did they
science.
call that?
I taught for Chuck Tipton's class.
Yeah.
I taught for, there was a psychosocial class. There was in the College of Public Health. I would do some programming there. And it was either on what was happening from a worksite health promotion standpoint or the psychosocial aspects. I do characterization and do a little bit of theater with my
Yeah, I wanted to
programming.
get to that. What you're doing here
Yeah.
actually sounded like some of that.
Yeah. Well,
Sounds very interesting.
we have threefold things. Not that you have to prepare for any of this stuff that much. It always gets anxious. You just have to let go and say, hey, listen, we're our own stories. But we had our global summit for the International Association for Worksite Health Promotion. So we had a day-long event for that was held pre-conference here. And that was exciting. We had over 80 people that were in attendance for that.
That's good.
So, and then I'm doing a presentation with a colleague on coaching and the art and the science of that. So we are sharing the research on coaching and coaches and clients, and as far as what they're doing. I'm talking a little bit more about integrating coaching into a wellness program or utilizing the techniques for coaching for just having a better understanding of your audience.
So you're dealing again with the social psycho,
Yes.
not how to do it, but
Exactly.
why and how the
Exactly.
connections and
Exactly that. And then the theater piece is on how to create a relationship with your audience. And I've got 4 or 5 characters that I'll weave into that. So,
Interesting.
yeah, it's a power-packed day.
Yes, I can see that. I understand because I teach history and most people don't like history. So you really have to tell stories and bring it to a personal level, and then they seem to like it then.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I can see what you're talking about there.
Well, and I think that what happens is people feel that either they don't have their story, have a story yet. I mean, particularly the young people in college, as far as, but so it's a lot of the points that I want to try to make is that as far as we all have our own story, and our story is complete right now for where we are right now, and that it is an indication of this chapter in your life, and that we need to draw on our previous chapters, but to give us the strength to go forward, but don't let any chapters hold you back. So as far as you need to embrace who you are right now and have the confidence to come and do an interview or write a paper or do a presentation or knock on that next door for an opportunity.
And it seems to me to know that your story is important.
Exactly. You matter, your story matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I can see where
Yeah.
that would be important for confidence.
And your connection to other people's stories matter.
Yes.
And that's why the importance of being in a tribe, which if we could call ACSM a tribe in our societies as these families of tribes.
So Facebook is a good thing for it seems it's a sort of the same idea. I don't do Facebook.
I don't do Facebook that much
Well,
either.
I've never done it, but it
yeah.
just seemed to me that was part of their message.
Their message.
That,
Well, maybe, and I think that we'd have to have a conversation with some younger people to
Yeah.
see how
Yeah.
you create an intimacy with that, or how do you create, and not that you always have to create, a deep intimacy, but enough of a connection.
some connection.
Maybe some of that social piece is good, or maybe Facebook is good for us to be able to say, hey, come to Vegas and join in the conversation of ACSM.
Yeah.
But for me to be able to say thank you, or to kind of have a connection with you after this, I'm not sure Facebook would do that for me.
Yeah.
Email would. I
Yeah.
think that we could be able to create that. The phone, I'm not sure how many people really talk that much
I
anymore.
know. It's our age. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
the same way. I don't do Twitter. I don't do Facebook.
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So anyhow, as I said, we're like the time is gone
Well,
already.
it was good
So
time.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk, and you're really doing interesting things.
Oh, thank you.
And it's your career is like so many people I've talked to is like you were at the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
and you really took advantage of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're
Well,
still doing stuff that you really like to do
yes.
and getting paid for it. I mean,
Yes.
what could be
Yes,
better,
yes.
right?
Well, and sometimes you have to do things for. We hate to use the word free, but
Yes.
you have to create an
get there.
opportunity.
Yeah.
And then, but also, as much as I've done that, we also have to value ourselves and value as far as what our worth is. So as far as that dance between the opportunity to provide information for people and then value your worth, that's the one that I'm still trying to figure that one out. And
Yeah.
I would love to do that and share that with everybody else.
Once you figure it out.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Okay, well, thank you
Well,
so
thanks.
much.
Thank
I
you,
really
thank you.
appreciate you taking the time.